Today, you have a lot of the talking heads that like to analyze stats in different ways. Well, he led the American League West in 7th inning sacrifice flies, so we got to put him in the Hall of Fame. Hello America, Canada, and remote parts of southwestern Benin. It is a country, look it up, and welcome to the Suicide Squeeze Baseball Show here on the Fireball Review channel. Well, decision 2022 has arrived. The Major League Baseball Hall of Fame announcement will be tomorrow. My guess is nobody is installed in the Hall of Fame. David Ortiz has an outside shot, but other than him, I don't think anyone is going to get picked. Nonetheless, I always send in a ballot to Cooperstown, New York every year. They sent me back a strange note this year saying that I was going to be put on some weird restricted list if I did it again. I am going to pay my first selection the ultimate compliment. If I have a madman and he's got a gun pointed at my head, he's got a gun pointed right at my temple, and he says, "Hey buddy, you better pick a pitcher to win one single game, otherwise I am going to blow you to kingdom come." Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. If any of the pitchers that I have seen, if I had witnessed with my own two eyes, okay, I never saw Bob Gibson pitch. I never saw Sandy Koufax pitch. These guys were way before my time. But if I'm going to pick one pitcher in my lifetime that I'm going to ride or die with, it's going to be Curtis Schilling. Now, let me just say right off the top, I am a small hall guy. I think you should be able to hear a player's name, and you should say Hall of Famer. Babe Ruth, Hall of Famer. Willie Mays, Hall of Famer. Nolan Ryan, Hall of Famer. Today, you have a lot of the talking heads that like to analyze stats in different ways. Well, he led the American League West in 7th inning sacrifice flies, so we got to put him in the Hall of Fame. No, I don't agree with that at all. I think a lot of guys are getting into the Hall of Fame that probably don't deserve it. Curt Schilling, if we're just taking his regular season numbers, I think he's a borderline guy, and quite honestly, I'm not so sure I put him in the Hall of Fame. But when this dude got into the playoffs, he was a bad man. He is without question in my mind the greatest big game pitcher over the last 30 years, with all due respect to Madison Bumgarner and also Andy Pettitte. Now look, if you're an individual that believes Schilling's numbers in the regular season don't quite measure up to Hall of Fame status, if you don't maybe place as high an emphasis on the postseason as I do, we can agree to disagree. We have no problem at all. We can respectfully disagree. But if you're one of these writers in particular, because mostly it's these baseball writers, these so-called experts that live out in New York and Chicago and here in LA that believe, well, there's a moral standard for the Hall of Fame, and Curt Schilling has tweeted some very controversial things over the years. Blah, 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 blah. And we're not putting him into the Hall of Fame. You know what? That is absolutely insanity, okay? If that's why you're keeping this guy out of the Hall of Fame, you know what you need to do? You need to go to the Hall of Fame president, and you need to say, you know what? We need to remove Babe Ruth's plaque. We need to remove Ty Cobb, and we need to look into the past of all these other players throughout the years, and we need to make sure that they haven't said any insensitive jokes over the years, that they haven't been arrested for anything, that they haven't. Let me tell you something. The Hall of Fame would be barren if this happened. There are a lot of people that aren't good people that are in the Hall of Fame. This is not the Hall of very good people. This is the Hall of Baseball Fame, okay? We are judging baseball talent here. I guarantee it. And I love Babe Ruth. But Babe Ruth was like a barbarian walking the streets of New York back in his day. I've heard some crazy stories about Babe Ruth. I love the guy. I mean, if there's one guy that is no longer with us that I could bring back and go hang out with for a night, it would be Babe Ruth. But the guy was insane, okay? Ty Cobb might have killed a man, okay? He was absolutely out of his mind from what I've heard, okay? I think he was a very smart guy, but he had a few screws loose up here. I mean, you probably have guys that have beaten their wives, unfortunately, beaten their kids, that have broken numerous laws, and they're already in the Hall of Fame. If we're going to hold Curt Schilling to this high moral standard that all these writers apparently want to do, we got to take all these guys out of the Hall of Fame. I mean, this is just utter insanity. Now, my second selection just so happens to be a teammate of Curt Schilling's when they were with the Boston Red Sox, and it is the aforementioned David Ortiz, Big Papi. one of the greatest designated hitters of all time. Let me tell you something, folks. When this guy used to play against the Angels, I hated this man with a passion. He would absolutely kill the Halos every year, year after year, especially in the playoffs. This guy was maybe sort of the Curt Schilling of offensive players in the early 2000s, maybe along with Derek Jeter, of course. The guy was an absolute stud. He is certainly Hall of Fame worthy. He has the regular season numbers, and he certainly has the postseason numbers. So many big clutch home runs, walk-off home runs. The guy was amazing, but like Schilling and like the other two guys that I'll announce here in a couple of minutes, he is shrouded in controversy. A lot of people believe that he failed a drug test, a PED test way back in 2003, but he's never failed a test as far as I know. And the league has said that he has never failed a test, and apparently that test was a bad test, so who the hell knows. Now, my final two Hall of Fame selections are sort of like brothers from another mother at this point. These guys are linked forever in infamy in baseball lore, and it is Roger Clemens, and it is Barry Bonds. Now, I understand there are some of you out there that anybody related to PEDs, you don't want them anywhere near the Hall of Fame. They got to pay to get in the Hall of Fame just like all the rest of us peons. But I got to say, with regards to Clemens and Bonds, I already think there's probably a couple guys in the Hall of Fame that might have used PEDs. I'm not going to say who they are. You guys can sort of make your own assumptions on that. I don't want to get any defamation lawsuits by making this video. But even those guys, and even all the guys that Bonds and Clemens played with that used PEDs, I didn't see any of these guys do the things that Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds did. Barry Bonds was like Clark Kent come to life when he was on the juice. I've never seen, the guy probably had syringes hanging out of the side of his ass at the time when he was running around the bases. But I've never seen any human being do the things that this guy was able to do. And a lot of guys were using during that time. Same with Clemens. I mean, the guy has 7 Cy Youngs. And even if you look at the time that these guys were using PEDs, look at the time before they started using PEDs. These guys were Hall of Famers before that. I think you got to put them in the Hall of Fame, quite frankly. Now, one final closing remark with regards to the Baseball Hall of Fame and how the voting goes and how the baseball writers vote for these guys. Some of the baseball writers are doing a fine job. They focus in on the stats and they hone in on the stats, and whatever else is going on, they just ignore all that stuff. To those guys, I say, great, good for you. But these other guys, act like scorned lovers when it comes to this stuff, and they hold grudges. They do it to Schilling. They act like this guy killed, 15 people. But they do it to Bonds, too. You look at the numbers with Roger Clemens and with Barry Bonds. Clemens is always maybe 1 or 2 points higher than Bonds. And the reason for this is Barry Bonds used to blow these guys off for interviews all the time. So it just shows you. These guys should not be voting. Let the Veterans Committee vote on this. Let maybe the owners. But enough of my rantings and ravings. Now I want to hear from you folks. Which players belong in the Hall of Fame? Which players don't belong in the Hall of Fame? Do you think UFOs will ever land on Earth? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, hit that dislike button if you didn't like this video. Otherwise, see you next time. Toodles.